Burgess,
Here.
Chambers, Harrison, Milliken, Phelps,
Here.
Patelko,
Here.
Pitts, Swan, and Vias is absent today.
Great, thank you. Just a couple of notes before we get started. Number one, we are able to stream the meeting. We figured that part out with some of the technical difficulties that the city has experienced here at City Hall, but we are not able to get call-in comments this evening. So if you are watching and expecting to or hoping to comment, unfortunately at the moment we are not able to take call-in comments. So we've got some minutes to drive down here. If you want to comment, or we'll wait. Not able to take those call-in comments tonight. The other one, the first of the two public hearings, will remain on the.
You might need to adjust the microphone so it's a little closer to you.
Is this better?
No.
Is this better?
Yes.
Oh, the cough button was on. Someone's got a permanent cough. Okay, thank you. Should I just start over? I will start over with my spiel. Thank you. Couple notes. Due to some of the technical difficulties that we've experienced here at City Hall today, we are able to stream. We have figured that out. But we are not able to take call-in comments today. So if you're at home watching and hoping to call in today, we apologize. We will not be able to take the call-in comments this evening. The second note, we've got two public hearings on the agenda tonight. We will not be changing the agenda, but the first item on the agenda regarding 116 Fellows Avenue will be adjourned and carried over to the next meeting. So that's not something we'll be hearing a presentation about or receiving any comments on this evening. And that was at the request of the applicant. So I just want to make that announcement up front in case people are watching, hoping to see or get any information on that tonight. So with that, are there any changes to the agenda? All right, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
All right, motion by Phelps, support?
I'll support the motion.
Support by Burgess. All in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, excellent. We received a copy of the minutes of the March 3rd, 2022 meeting. Were there any comments, changes, questions, edits? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the March 3rd minutes?
So moved.
Motion by Burgess.
Support.
Support by Patelko. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, great. Any communication or announcements? None. So it moves us into public hearings. Again, we are apologize. We're unable to take call-in comments, so we'll be receiving public comments from folks in the audience, and I'm not seeing any, so I won't go through that whole spiel, but if I need to, I'll do that later. So we'll go right into our first public comment, or first public hearing, PC 2022.02, 116 Fellows Avenue. As I stated earlier, the applicant has requested an adjournment of that to our May Planning Commission meeting. So I would request a motion for adjournment from a member of the Planning Commission to the May Planning Commission meeting.
So moved.
All right. Motion by Harrison. Is there support?
Support.
Oh, support by Pitts. Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. All right. So then we'll move on to PC 2022.03, text amendments to Chapter 50 zoning code proposed by city staff.
I'm going to bring up this presentation. It is pretty short because it's hard to kind of visually display, just text edits. So what you have before you this evening are some general code text amendments to Chapter 50, the zoning ordinance. I will review them with you tonight, and if you all are comfortable at the end of that review, you will make a recommendation to the City Commission to recommend approval or not of those amendments. So these amendments really come from a running list that staff keeps as they apply the code. A lot of communities view the zoning code as something that is very static and kind of a behemoth, and it's hard to move and change. As you know, and if you don't know, you will know soon, we change ours as we need to. If something is incorrect, if something isn't working, if it's proving a barrier, if there's a better way of doing it, we're always open to considering those changes. So what you have, again, before you tonight is from that running list, from staff's use of the code, use with individual property owners, with residents, with developers. Anytime we're trying to explain the code to somebody and we kind of it's a hiccup or the language doesn't seem clear, we try to keep a running list of that. So we can, when we have the opportunity, we can make the changes so it can be read by everybody and understood by everybody. So some of the changes include things for clarification of wording, again, our application of the code, some best practices, and importantly, variance requests that are heard by the Zoning Board of Appeals. Some variance requests are very unique and super parcel based, and it doesn't matter what the code says, this parcel, because of its shape, size, or other factors, a variance would have been needed. But when we see repeat variances over and over and over again, it tells us that there might be an issue with the code itself. So a lot of the tweaks to the language you have in front of you tonight are a result of repeat variances and a request actually from our Zoning Board of Appeals to make those changes in a timely manner rather than kind of wait and save them for a larger code update like the one coming later this spring or summer. So here are some examples, and I did talk about some of these last time. The first set of edits. So first of all, you all got, and you got an updated copy today. This is a PDF of the full code with the changes in red. I broke them down also into several smaller documents, just so you could kind of look and see from each reason bucket that the changes were coming from. And so the first, there were two, and so the first one is general code updates. And these are those things that I just described. So things like the use definition for bed and breakfast. The Zoning Board of Appeals saw multiple variances on bed and breakfast over the last couple of years. And part of it is just kind of the evolution of how bed and breakfast operates and some very technical issues with the code. For example, we had a variance request that we had to hear where a building was divided into 2 units, so 2 separate entrances. The owner of the bed and breakfast lived in one unit. They were using the second unit as bed and breakfast. They were all in the same structure, but because of the definition of a bed and breakfast and being in one dwelling unit, we had to, take them through the variance process. So, things like that where our language is adjusted to make sure that the intent, the language itself and the intent match. There were several changes to the parking code that were included with this. And again, these are over, with variances, our ability to enforce the code. So example, clarifying how personal RVs can be stored on your property in your driveway and parked there. If the language isn't clear, then we can't follow up and make sure that we're being compliant with our ordinances. And when we get complaints, if it's not clear, it's harder for us to enforce. There were a couple of new parking, some parking numbers changed, including for industrial uses. Originally, we had a parking requirement, a minimum parking requirement of 1 space for every 2 employees at their largest shift, and we kept running into difficulties and variance requests from industrial users that needed a larger number. And so we've changed that to be something that is 1 space per employee at their largest shift. So it's based on reality of what they need as opposed to, kind of a random number drawn out of the air for parking. So that's the general code update bucket. The one that's slightly, the one that is changed in multiple locations is allowing ground floor residential in the community commercial district. Because the community commercial district lived in Appendix A, I couldn't change it in Appendix A because that document is static. As we, every time we want to make an update, we make it in 50, bring the old language over. So we needed to bring that district into Chapter 50. And so that meant I had to bring in the definition of the district, where we define the zoning districts. I had to bring it into the use table, and anytime that there were any standards that were specifically associated for a use in the commercial district, I had to make sure that was noted. And I needed to bring over, very importantly, the dimensional requirements. How high of a building is allowed? What are the setbacks? Driveways and those type of things. And so to make this one change, which has been at the top of our running list for a long time, and is one that gets repeated variance requests, it meant that I had to change multiple smaller sections in Chapter 50 to bring community commercial into this document and then make sure that ground floor residential was allowed. And again, that's one of the reasons why I gave it to you on a separate sheet of paper so you could see all of the little places that we had to do some small tweaks to make sure that it was housed fully in Chapter 50. The other bucket of uses has to do with marijuana. Now, these are also, the reason they're brought forward to you today is the same reasons. This is application of the code over the last couple years, needing some clarifications, specifically on how we handle medical marijuana retailers, or medical marijuana provisioning centers, and adult use retailers. And they had different distances set from those uses to specific protected uses. Yet the state allows those licenses to be stacked, meaning that you can sell both medical as well as adult use or recreational marijuana in one spot, but they were regulated differently, which caused some problems in terms of the application of the ordinance. And so this change allows us to regulate them the same. They are essentially the same use. They're both a sale retail use. Some other clarifications on language and prohibiting drive-throughs. And that is really, that's the sum of these edits. I know that there are several of them, so I'm happy to kind of go through. I have a copy here. If anyone has specific questions that they want to bring up. In your packets, you received, in the attachments, I noted why the changes were being made. Was it a clarification of language? Was it a best practice? Was it something the ZBA had recommended or, heard in cases? And so I tried to outline each one of those changes. But if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Are there any questions for staff? Yes.
So regarding the update to the marijuana section, specifically the drive-through portion, how are we talking this applies only to drive-through windows, or are we talking curbside pickup as it is now known in COVID times? What constitutes a drive-through in this change?
So in this change, we're talking about, drive-through facilities, a full drive-through window. During COVID, the state did allow for a short period of time facilities to have drive-through facilities. That was temporary during COVID. That is no longer in effect. And so that was something that was, we wanted to be clear that was not permitted.
Other questions? So with the CC bringing those over, were there any tweaks to, I admit I did not go back and look at the existing CC district. Were there any tweaks or modifications to the CC text that had to be made to adapt to Chapter 50?
Not very many. Not that significantly change the district itself. Of course, we made the change that we intended to make, which was that residential uses are indeed allowed on the ground floor, although we have stated, because this truly is a commercial district, they can be on the ground floor, but they should not be along the front facade, when directly facing a street and up close to a street. But that allows buildings in the back of a lot, if the lot has more than one building, to have residential on the ground floor, and it certainly allows residential on the ground floor, again, just not up along the street because, again, it's a commercial district and that's the primary use. In terms of dimensional standards, for the most part, things were kept the same. I'm going to flip to the table real quick so I can talk about it. So same height, generally the same setback provisions. We did add, community commercial, again, exists in Appendix A right now. It is tied to a set of design guidelines that also exist in Appendix A, which talk about things like if you're doing a shopping center or you're doing a development over a certain size, you need a certain amount of transparency. Remember, that's that ratio of windows to wall. You need entrances in certain locations and other details. Because we were bringing that over and kind of separating it a bit from Appendix A, we put those things right in here. And the other thing to note is that we kept the relevant things and put them in here. The other thing to note, this table, Table 5.1-2, Dimension Standards by Districts, it's kind of lonely. There's just one district in it right now. As we bring over all the commercial districts, they will populate this table. So we are setting it up knowing that we were eventually going to be populating it with the other commercial districts and other residential districts. Any districts that aren't based on lot types would find their way into this table sooner rather than later. So it's set up that way. So, we were very clear when a building is, within a certain, if a building is up close to the street within 25 feet of the property line, we do have an entrance requirement and some minimum transparency requirements. It's a range. The threshold starts fairly low. We noted number of driveways like we do for our other districts. Yeah, but for the most part, we kept it the same.
That's good. The main reason for my question, and this is getting very, I guess, picky or particular, is there a maximum lot area for rezoning in the existing district?
There is not in the current district. There is a minimum for community commercial. I put maximum lot area in there for rezoning, knowing what's coming down with some new commercial districts that we'll be working on and presenting over the next couple of months, where we have community commercial is kind of the big anything goes district, right? You would expect very large parcels. We currently in our code now have several smaller commercial districts. We call them CN1 or CN2, so commercial neighborhood 1 and 2, commercial office, commercial neighborhood office, that try to regulate scale by talking about the amount of square footage that the building itself can have and not the lot itself. So I would expect, as we are tweaking those districts, and we're going to talk a little bit about this in the city planners report tonight, that as we have iterative districts, right, really big scale to smaller neighborhood scale, there'll be a maximum, as a way to differentiate, there'll be a maximum size in order to be rezoned a district to separate them.
Well, then I'll reserve my comments till then.
You may reserve. I look forward to that.
Any other comments or questions on these changes? All right, if not, this is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to come forward and speak to this item at this time? Seeing none, I'm assuming the phone issue remains as it was. So
Unresolved.
Unresolved. So I will close the public hearing. Any last clarifying questions? If not, I'll take a motion to open discussion. Remember, we are recommending the proposed changes to the city commission. So we'll need a motion to recommend these ordinance amendments to the city commission.
I'll move that we recommend these ordinance changes to the city commission.
Motion by Phelps,
Second.
second by Harrison. Thank you. Is there any discussion on these proposed changes? No discussion? Excellent. All right, they seem pretty straightforward, fairly businesslike. Appreciate the presentation. I think we need a roll call vote.
Burgess,
Aye.
Chambers,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Milliken,
Yes.
Phelps,
Yes.
Patelko,
Yes.
Pitts,
Yes.
Swan.
Excellent. Thank you. So these will go on to the City Commission. Next item, public comments. Do we have any public comments on non-agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on. Discussion action items. City planner report.
Specifically these that I have listed here. So again, sign code, landscape, screening, fencing, lighting, the new and updated commercial districts, and the updated zoning map. As I said before, and I'm not going to go on too much, but the sign code we wrote last year, sign company, neighborhood businesses decided not to bring forward to wait to do a commercial district. So that one is pretty much ready to go. It is online. For anyone to review, including some presentations that have audio with them, so you can hear all the details on them. We'll be bringing that forward later this spring. What I really wanted to talk about was the slide that I showed last time with the commercial district and kind of where we're going at this point. I mentioned that we have a lot of commercial districts previously. We have commercial office, we have commercial neighborhood office, we have commercial neighborhood 1, we have commercial neighborhood 2, and we have community commercial. We have commercial mixed use district. We have our new form-based mixed use district, node, liver 1, liver 2, and then we have the BTR, Business Technology and Research District, which exists primarily, actually only, on the Business Technology and Research Park that is located at Drake and Parkview. This isn't even mentioning all the overlay districts that we have in the code that exist in the code but were never used. So they kind of exist in name only, and again have not been used. CN2 is not mapped anywhere, and I don't believe CNO is mapped anywhere right now either. So we kind of have these districts that were created for a reason. There's kind of micro differences between all these districts, not huge differences, and
Has everyone pushed their button on mute?
Pierre, could you have accidentally muted me when you put me on pause? Okay. It's okay.
I don't think I did.
We'll see the cough and or the no cough, and we'll see if we can hear me. I mean, the light is on. I feel like I'm talking until my, I mean, I can hear it, but I don't. The City Hall is having technology issues
Yeah.
It seems to be kind of par for the course.
I think up is good,
So,
right?
as I was saying, we have a lot of districts, we don't use them all, and there's not a lot of differences between the two. We've also struggled with some of the districts, because while they had well-meaning intent, like trying to get to the neighborhood scale of development, for development along our corridors, they often did it in ways that didn't always achieve those ends, and would run into issues. So things like the maximum square footage of a building on a lot, or CO, commercial office, would allow offices, right? Medical offices, financial planning offices, who might have appointments all day long, right? And they're meant to be kind of these transition areas that next to residential that aren't very intense, but would it allow a boutique retail that doesn't get a lot of traffic throughout the day, right? And so there's just some things that were kind of well-intentioned but didn't do what we needed them to do. So, working with two consultants, we have started to look at the commercially zoned lots in the city. How big are they? What are their uses? Where are they located? Kind of what are their characteristics? So we could start to figure out what of these districts are working for us. How do we kind of collapse? How do we update to make sure that we have clear, concise districts, districts in the code that we use and aren't just there to be there, and move forward. So what does that look like? And again, I said this graphic last time, but right now we're proposing, the way it's going to shake out is that we're going to end up from CO and CNO, CN1, CN2, and CC, going from those to 3 districts. A commercial node, which responds to the master plan, which noted kind of larger, kind of multiple neighborhood shopping centers as commercial nodes. We're keeping community commercial, and then we have a lighter, smaller scale version of community commercial, CCC. Commercial mixed use, it's mapped in a lot of different places, and ultimately when we get to the map, if we're not at today, that it might be, those properties might become more than, there's not one-to-one district, but we're not talking about the map today because it's not done, so I don't want to go on that road. But I wanted to kind of show you how these things are beginning to line up. So as we are thinking about, the districts, and I alluded to this a few minutes ago, making sure that our districts are distinct from one another. So what is community commercial and what is, not community commercial, I guess is the way to think about it. So I pulled up, these are zoning maps for 2 corridors. Stadium Drive is on your, right? My right.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see the parcels there. There's a lot of large parcels. Several of them have outlots divided in front. The commercial here is not linked to residential lots, meaning it doesn't exist at the end of it doesn't see into a street that has residential on it. It's very isolated as commercial. Typically, it's not very walkable, very auto-dominant. So let's take that compared to the West Edge corridor, which is West Edge south of White, which is White right here, White, my cursor, and Court. So generally smaller lots, generally. They tend to exist at the end of residential blocks that feed into the main corridor of West Edge. And they tend to be walkable outside of, having some parking lots in the front. The uses are small, it's a lot of restaurants, a lot of small retail, a lot of uses that you would, could easily apply to those that live within a short distance of each other. The other thing we looked at were the street types. Now this is using the street types from the street design manual. This is a community connector that goes along Stadium Drive. That's our biggest, highest speed street in the city. Pedestrian spaces are always, and bike spaces are off street. Compared to the south end of the West Edge corridor, which is a commercial business street, which is a little took some information from a study, and we created, this is not a map, a zoning map, this is a study of the properties on the corridor, and starting to divide them by size. And so we looked at, this is the Westminster corridor again, and started to look at what was the common size, right? And you'll see that most of the parcels fall under 1 acre. So if we were to set a maximum, Chair, you asked about this earlier, it is a way to help separate CP2 from CC. One option could be to set a maximum size for rezoning. And this would kind of help us figure out some of those details of what the parcel size is. The area up at the top is in another color, just another color, because that's where the master plan and the commercial node, and so we're separating those out for different settings. And similar over, this is Portage Street, and Court, Express, and Lovers going to place. So again, took the parcel to try to understand size, how they function adjacent to a neighborhood. Was there a commercial node in the area? And again, this graph that we're seeing is lot size. And again, most of them fell under about 1 acre structure. Showing you how this is the graphic in the top is the future land use plan, and 2 of the commercial nodes are in the future land use plan, which is corresponding with the considering for zoning commission. Okay, so what does this start to look like? I appreciate this is small, at the next meeting, I'll be able to provide you all copies. And so what we've done is we started to, if these were our districts, what will the standards be? How do we start to break them up to make sure that they're all in categories that are different from each other, and that are meeting the intent of each of the districts. And so again, the table that we just looked at, that was known as just one district, starting to think about adding more districts, and things like minimum or maximum lot size, setback, height, and all the other responsibilities. So it's beginning to start to work things out in order to have more cluster, so we start to figure out when we go up to community, we talk about mapping, what are the parameters for a new district? What does that look like? So we can have conversations that we really need. Does anybody have any questions about this kind of going to skip out or what kind of information?
Go for it.
I wanted to ask a question, just when you put up the two different,
Thank you.
I just wanted to know how the different parcel sizes, especially, maybe 2 examples, from the stadium size and the west side.
Can you make sure that your microphone apologize?
On. There you go.
Oh, it was me, I'm sorry, I apologize if that was me. I wanted to know, how does the parcel size, the traffic concerns, and then the street calming practices kind of play into the rezoning practices, or the anticipation of the consideration of the rezoning?
Sure, absolutely. In the 2025 master plan, we talked about that all development has kind of 2 pieces, and that for the most part, the city had really just looked at one of 2 pieces, which was just what happens on lots, and didn't necessarily consider the street next to it. And Imagine Kalamazoo in the 2025 master plan really tried to put those together as 2 pieces of the same pie, and so you need to be able to consider both pieces. What happens in the street adjacent to it, because that helps define the area, and talks about whether or not it impacts the success of a use. You probably wouldn't front a home on a highway, right? There's a reason those 2 don't work together. It's kind of an extreme example, but just to make sure that we're considering those together. When we started updating the zoning code, right after the master plan, we included some street types in our zoning code to start to help us think about working with those two pieces together. And so the code right now already has street types that help guide uses, location of uses, and height in some cases. And this is kind of a continuation of that. The goal, we're updating the zoning code for a few reasons. One, it's from 2005, right? It needs to be updated. It doesn't necessarily reflect development patterns of today. And we also want to make sure that we are setting standards that support whatever is happening on the adjacent lots. So if it's business and economic development areas, we want to make sure that we're having the right set of uses that are flexible, that we're creating minimum and maximum lot sizes that aren't going to be artificially barriers that development is going to bump into. We want to make sure that that right scale occurs on the right scale street, right? So if it's a small walkable business, that's going to thrive on a corridor that has sidewalks, that has slower speeds. And so that's how those two things start to align and work together. And so as we have updated the zoning code and as we continue to update the zoning code, we keep those two things in mind and not just look at adjacent buildings when saying the character of the area is X.
Other questions? I have these totally backwards. Other questions? So since I brought up the lot area thing, I'm going to need to think about it or need more convincing on the value of the minimum lot area, maximum lot area, just because I guess personally I don't want to add standards where they're not needed and I just need to think about it. They could be very worthwhile, but I'm not certain at the moment. I need to spend a little more time on it. But I worry that it's just going to lead to more variance requests and I need to know or understand more what it's going to contribute. Most larger parcels are larger for a reason, and they're coming for a rezoning because they're coming for a redevelopment. They're larger because some pre-existing use resulted in it's larger. It was a shopping center that's outdated, or it was some civic use like a school or a church or a ginormous parking lot or something like that. And or there's some natural feature that limits the use of 80% of it, and thus it's artificially large when you really can only use less than an acre of it. And so now that's what the variance process is for, but why have a standard in there that forces the variance process when it's not contributing value? So that's what, we don't need to answer that, but that's where I'm coming from. That's why I brought that up.
Call from Liverick 1, Liverick to a node. We have no minimum lot widths. We don't have minimum lot sizes for that reason.
Well, let me...
But and this is obviously something we need to talk about. Your concerns are completely valid, right? We don't want to put things in that are going to cause problems. That's kind of what zoning has done in the past, and we're really trying to look at it in more detail. Community commercial, again, is that anything goes district, right? It's big, it's auto-oriented, it's, it is what it is. Those areas that exist as CC2, for the lack of a better name, that are at the end of residential blocks, that are on slower corridors, that receive patrons both on foot, transit, car. If we want those to slowly evolve, a maximum lot size may help that happen. So if you have one giant parcel on a block of a lot of smaller parcels that kind of do fit the standard, and it's coming for redevelopment, the encouraging factor would be maybe we need to be creating smaller lots as part of this project, whether you want to call them outlots or individual lots. That is not to say that your concerns aren't worthy of further discussion.
Well, and just to clarify, I'm totally on board with some sort of lot size requirement in that district. But whether that's tied to the rezoning or whether that's tied to a lot split, land division, whatever type of process results in that lot being created, I think it's the mechanism that's the issue. If someone redevelops, I don't even want to throw anything out there and make someone upset, but you take a 10 acres and you rezone it into CC2, and then they come up with a plan that into a bunch of smaller things that's totally consistent with what the vision is, but they couldn't do that if they couldn't first rezone it. So that's what my thought process is.
I'm sorry, I need to wait for you to press the
Yes,
button.
sorry. And I need to remember to do that.
So one of the reasons why it's taking so long for me to do a preliminary review of the zoning map is because I am going lot by lot,
Yeah.
right? And really trying to look at all the parcels. While I can't say that there won't be a bigger parcel that gets lumped into CC2 because it meets the other factors, because we are not painting with the broad brush that we've painted in the past, the thought is that there would be fewer of those, for what it's worth.
And that's what I said. We don't have to answer the question today, but I just wanted you to kind of know where I was thinking. We'll have to figure this out later. Other comments? All right, carry on.
I was going to try and get my screen back.
Okay, that's definitely the
Let's
cost.
see. Well, that's okay. It was just, it is just the timeline. It doesn't seem to be working, and that's fine. So over between now and the next meeting, we hope to finish and release more drafts on things like landscaping and fencing and get those out for public review. The goal is to set up public meetings in May, kind of going around, likely to multiple locations throughout the city, so we're hitting a wide audience, making sure that we are outreaching to our large commercial operators in town, as many of our neighborhood business associations as we can hit in town, to kind of spread the word. And then I will provide you with an update at the next meeting for where things stand and anything that's ready to kind of have a discussion on. Like, these were kind of loose, but I wanted to at least introduce them to you today. I'll take this time to make that presentation again on maybe landscaping and fencing, right? Just so you are hearing it more than once. Public meetings, they're streamed, try to reach more people. So that is the plan for this process.
Excellent. Any other thoughts or questions or comments? Great.
I do have one other item.
Yes.
This week, the Community Sustainability Plan was released, the public draft of it. It's available on imaginekalamazoo.com/projects. When it's done, it'll be moved over to plans, but right now it's projects. And you can get a copy of it there. There are going to be several outreach activities that are happening over the next 2 or 3 weeks, both virtual and in person. So I would encourage you to check them out, read the draft, provide comment, attend an event if you can. And then this will be going forward after that period and edits are made to the City Commission for approval.
Great. Thank you. All right. Does that wrap up your report? Okay. City Commission liaison comments. I think you should be good. No?
Now? There we
Ah,
go.
There we go. Sorry.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see everyone.
Thanks for testing.
So just to add to what City Planner Anderson shared. So, our sustainability plan, this has been long awaited, right? This is very exciting. It's a big deal. It's a 10-year guide. It has 4 key themes, 10 community goals, 29 strategies, and 81 actions. So it is a jam-packed document, definitely worth your bedside reading if you have a chance to. And then City Planner Anderson also shared there's some upcoming events, but the first one is next Monday. There's actually an open house in the community room on Monday, April 11th from 5:30 to 7:30. So that's one in-person event, and then there's a virtual town hall on Wednesday, April 27th from 5 to 6:30. So I would encourage you or the public to attend if you're able. Want to get a little bit local government nerdy here for a second, but something I'm particularly proud that we accomplished here recently that's probably not going to make front page news, but our bond ratings. Best way to think about it is when our ratings go up, our interest rates go down, which is a win-win for us as taxpayers, right? It means we either get to do more or we save money. And so the city has what's called a general obligation debt rating through S&P Global. We recently underwent 3 separate bond rating calls with S&P Global. So we have that city's general obligation debt rating, which they gave us a AA- and said it is with a stable outlook. That's what we want, right? We want at least a stable outlook, and so that's really positive. They said we have strong management, good financial policies and practices, a 20% fund balance, which is also a big deal because our target is 13%, so it gives you an idea of what that looks like, cash liquidity, and an increasing balance of our FFE. So one added benefit of our Foundation for Excellence is that it's improving our bond ratings. So they also said there's a possibility of future rate increases when the FFE is near or fully endowed. So that's good news, right? But here's the really exciting one. This is the really nerdy one, all right? So our city utility funds, which is our water and our wastewater, each received a AA- with an improved outlook from negative to stable. So that's exciting news for us, and they said the biggest factor for that was the Commission's willingness to increase rates to support capital improvements to replace aging infrastructure, right? So there's an example of a very difficult, tough decision to make where we know that it's going to increase rates on users, but the increased rating could, make our investments, could make things more affordable for us to do for interest rates. These ratings are significant positive indicators of the city's management and financial factors across the board. So that's good news for the city of Kalamazoo, and I thought I wanted to share that with you as well. Another highlight that we recently learned about is that the city of Kalamazoo will be receiving $564,534 from the state of Michigan's 2021 sales tax revenue sharing from marijuana. Why that's a big deal? Again, it's over $500,000. Our original estimate was only $200,000 of revenue, so not shabby. So clearly, the folks in the city of Kalamazoo are enjoying our fine dispensary establishments. And then we're required to set aside 25% as part of our social equity policy as well. So that's held office there as well. So there's a few updates for you about what's happening and news that's happening in our world, and hope you all have a wonderful next month. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Planning Commissioner comments. Anyone have any Planning Commissioner comments? Mr. Pitt. Oh, Chambers.
Well, I will just remind everyone that we do have an election on May 3rd. So by the time we come back, hopefully we have good news because Kalamazoo Public Schools does have a millage that needs to be renewed. And also our law enforcement for the county as a whole also has a renewal that will also need to be supported by all of us here in the city of Kalamazoo and the county. And that's going to be May 3rd. So make sure that you guys all vote or send in your AV ballots. The city clerk's office has already started to mail those out. So make sure that you send them back in.
Thank you. Mr. Pitts.
Hello, everyone. Mine is not so informative. I just wanted to say it's good to see everybody again, to be in the same circle. It's good to see the faces that I've seen on on the screen, but not in person. So I'm glad to see everybody.
Thank you for that. It is nice. Other thoughts or comments? Close. Yes.
Can I make a quick one for my nerddom in Kalamazoo? I'm an avid book reader, so wanted to extend the invite for the commission to join me in a book reading kind of session. I've been reading this book called The 13 Ways to Kind of Kill Your Community by Doug Griffith. This kind of talks about different things that leaders can do that can get in the way of community growth. It's been a great read so far, but I don't do the best at holding myself accountable, so I wanted to see if the commission would join me or just anyone was interested to kind of support in that endeavor, and we could read it collectively to see what kind of conversations happen. So I wanted to put that out there.
It's nice. Thank you. Can you give that title one more time?
13 Ways to Kill Your Community. It's by Doug Griffin.
All right.
Griffith.
Thank you. Other commissioner comments? It is nice to see everyone. Thank you. One more time, I apologize for the technical difficulties we're having this evening. Could not get the phones working. We did want to proceed with the meeting due to the public notices that were sent. So again, I apologize for the phone issues, and I was going to say vote, but we covered that already, so thank you. And with that, we're adjourned. Thanks.
So I've been checking around. I've got this book from Amazon. I got some copies in the